So in this video we are going to be talking about graphing using the slope and the y-intercept. So we're actually going to be specifically talking about this particular formula here, or the y equals mx plus b, which we also refer to as the slope-intercept form. And we refer to it this way because it has those two pieces of information readily available for us. We're going to start with this m right here. That is what we call our slope. And slope is just the rise over the run. Basically, we're talking about how much the line changes over a period of time. What I like to usually say is, instead of saying rise, the top of your slope is always going to tell you whether you need to move up or down, and the bottom of your slope is going to tell you if you need to move right or left. I also like to say that slope is basically directions. It's like you're giving somebody directions on how to get to your house. So you're telling them how many blocks to go up, how many blocks to go to the right or to the left. You're giving that kind of directions. But in order for somebody to give somebody directions, they have to have a starting point, and that's where we come in with the b value. The b value here is your y-intercept. Okay, and that's the point 0, b. If you'll remember from the last video we talked about the y-intercept, we know that the x value is always 0, and if I were to plug in 0 here for x, notice that 0 times m would go away and I would be left with just the b. That's why he's our y-intercept, and he is our starting point. He's that you are here map, or you are here star on a map, and telling you where to begin. So when you're graphing lines, we have to identify the slope and the y-intercept, and then we want to graph our y-intercept first, and then use our slope or our directions to find the next point on our line. Okay, so for our first example we have here, we have the line y equals negative 2x plus 4. You'll notice that this line is already in that y equals mx plus b form. So all we have to do is pick out our corresponding values. So the negative 2 and just the negative 2 is your slope. So we would put negative 2 here in this box, and we're going to come back to that as we get ready to graph. And the 4 here, that is your y-intercept. And remember that this y-intercept is a point. Notice that it already has the 0 marked for me. I'm just putting the 4 in the box, but I do want you to realize that this is a point on our graph. It's not just the number 4. So now we have to use those two values to graph our line. So what we're going to do is start at our origin, and we're going to graph our y-intercept first. So in this particular case, since it's a positive 4 and we have an x value of 0, we're not going to move left or right, but we're going to go up to 4, and we're going to put a dot right here at 4. Now let's talk about the slope. Now our slope in this case is negative 2, but remember when we talked about it from the definition, it was rise over run. It was in that fraction format. So anytime we have a slope that's a whole number, we always want to put it in a fraction, and the way you do that is you place that over 1. Any whole number is always a fraction over 1. Now the negative 2 here is telling us we need to go down 2, and the positive 1 is telling us we need to go to the right 1. So we're going to go down 2 to the right 1. Okay, so we'll start at our y-intercept, because remember that's our starting point, and we're going to use our two values here as our directions. So from here we're going to count down 2 to the right 1, and notice that we don't make a point until we've made both of these movements. And the really cool thing about slope is that you can repeat it over and over again. You only have to do it one time to get your 2 points to draw your line, but if you don't draw good lines, like I don't draw good lines, you can start from that new point that you just had and go down 2 and to the right 1, and there's another point on your line. The other really cool thing is that slope can be reversed. So in this particular instance, we're going down 2 and to the right 1. We could also go up 2 and to the left 1. So notice it's the exact opposite movements that we just did. Now I'm going to go back to my y-intercept. I'm going to count up 2 and to the left 1. and there's a point on my line. And notice that it lines up with the other 3 points I already had drawn, and now I can take and connect my points, and there's the line y equals negative 2x plus 4. Okay, so for our next example, we have y equals negative 4 over 3x plus 2. Again, notice that this is already in that format, y equals mx plus b, so we're good to go about picking out our values. Our negative 4/3, again, that is our slope. So here, down here, we're going to put negative 4/3 in our box, making sure we can see that negative. And then this positive 2 right here, that again is our y-intercept. So we're going to put our 2. Again, remember that this is a point 0, 2. And now we get to graph our line. So starting again at the origin, we're going to graph our y-intercept first. That's our 0, 2. So we're going to go up to 2. Make our mark. Remember, this is the y-intercept, so our y-intercept should be on our y-axis. Now the next thing we're going to do is talk about this slope. So we use a negative 4. Remember, that is down 4, and then it's a positive 3, so that's going to be to the right 3. Your negative needs to go either with the top or the bottom of your fraction. You'll notice in the original equation the negative was on the top of my fraction. I just left him there, but he does need to go with one or the other. So in this case we're doing our down 4. So we're going to start at our y-intercept at 0, 2, and we're going to count down 4. So 1, 2, 3, 4, and then to the right 3. And we end up at this point right here. And again, if you're like me and you don't draw very straight lines, I can count that off again. So going down 4 and to the right 3. There's another point on my line, and now all I have to do is connect my dots. And there's our line. Okay, so for our third example, we have 5x plus 2y equals 6. Now I want you to notice that this is not in the right format. Remember that we want it to be y equals mx plus b. We want it to be solved for y, and in this particular instance both our x and y are over here on the right hand side. We don't have just y by itself. So before we can go and pick out the slope and y-intercept, we need to make our graph look, or make our equation look like this guy by solving for y. It takes 2 steps to do that. So I'm going to write my problem out here. I've got 5x plus 2y equals 6. The first thing I want to do when I'm trying to solve for y is I actually want to move the 5x. I got to get this x out of the way first. So we're going to subtract 5 from both sides. Our x's on this side are going to cancel each other out. Over here we're going to get 2y equals. Now I'm going to list my x first because I want him to look like this particular format, although technically I could do this a little differently. But I want to go ahead and put negative 5x plus 6. Notice that I didn't actually add these two together because I can't. He's got an x and he does not. So I just placing them on the same side together. Now the next thing I want to do is I want to get rid of this 2. So I'm going to divide everybody by 2. And notice when I do this, I divide every single term by 2. If you'll do that, it'll make it a lot easier for you to simplify this down. So these 2's are going to go away, which is what we were wanting to happen. I'm actually going to write my answer up here because I'm running out of a little bit of room. And we're going to say y equals. Now I can't divide the 2 and the 5, and I don't want to put this in decimal form because that's my slope and I need that fraction. So I'm going to leave it negative 5 over 2 x. Now I will say this, if you can reduce this negative 5 halves or this fraction that's here, you want to reduce it to its lowest format, but you want to leave it in the fraction form so when you go to your slope you'll know if you have to go up or down or right or left. And then here we're going to do 6 divided by 2, so that's going to give us plus 3. So now we know that our slope is negative 5 over 2 and our y-intercept is positive 3. So we're going to graph these two values. Again, 0, 3 is our y-intercept, so he's on our y-axis. We're going to count from our origin up 3, puts us right here at 0, 3. And then our slope here is -5/2. Kind of all of our examples have been negative, but that's okay. So that because it's negative, that means we're going to go down 5 and to the right 2. So starting from my origin, starting from my y-intercept, I'm going to count down 5. So 1, 2, 3, 4, 5, and to the right 2. And there's the next point on my line. Again, if I want a third point, I can do the same thing and count down 5. 1, 2, 3, 4, 5, to the right 2. There's another point on my graph, and I just need to connect my dots. Again, you don't technically need that third point that we just found. It's just to help you make a nice straight line.